Peace, love, harmony, beauty, namaste. Welcome again, my brothers and sisters. mxgdml here. This is episode 4 of I Killed a Yemeni Mother, #TAXESFUNDWAR. It's so hard saying that. Just because it's such a heavy sentence with words that are, heavy. So with this sage smudge, let us lighten our spirits so we may be open and receptive to the heavy topics that we will discuss today. From me to you, in sage and love, cleansing, clarification, openness, wonderment, understanding, empathy, sympathy, all the like. Peace, love, harmony, beauty, namaste. And I'm going to open with this book, The Coming Insurrection by the Invisible Committee. It's true. That's the name of the author. And this is a highly interesting book that I've yet to really dive into, but I know that it is about French unrest with the proletariat and the bourgeois and the petit bourgeois, and this discusses how society functions for them. But again, because we're all one and human, these lessons are applicable everywhere. So, yes, a part in the introduction reads as follows. What this war is being fought over is not various ways of managing society, but irreducible and irreconcilable ideas of happiness and their worlds. We know it, and so do the powers that be. The militant remnants observe us, always more numerously, always more identifiably, and they are tearing out their hair trying to fit us into their little compartments in their little heads. They hold out their arms to us, the better to suffocate us with their failures, their paralysis, their stupid problematics. From elections to quote-unquote transitions, militants will never be anything other than that which distances us, each time a little further, from the possibility of communism. Luckily, we will accommodate neither treason nor deception for much longer. Well, communism was definitely an attempt in Yemen, and communism as an ideal, and theoretically with Marxism, functions in a very human way of just leveling the playing field, I think, and making sure we're all there for each other. That idea is in Norway, in Scandinavia. It's these societies which don't go me, 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 me. It's we, 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 we. Flipping that M upside down. I want to dive right back into one of the sentences here. They hold out their arms to us, the better to suffocate us, with their failures, their paralysis, their stupid problematics. That's war. Stupid problematics, failure, paralysis. And it distances us and divides us. So let's change that. Let's change that paradigm, tear down the wall, but seriously, hold out a hand. Look at the people around you. I mean, that happened to me going to the gym the other day, right? Somebody's on the sidewalk, and I'm walking along, and I'm feeling good because I just have all these endorphins flowing, and then there's a gentleman in a wheelchair, bearded, dirty, hunched, and sick. And I'm walking by him, and he's sneezing, and he's coughing, and he just looks so pained. That brings me to this point here where I'm asking myself, what else am I going to do? Well, for one, I'm going to talk about the Yemeni people, so that's a way of processing it. And in my own life here, how else am I going to help people like that? Well, there's a few ways that I do that, especially when I'm working on sets, and I'll tell you more about that in another time. There are definitely, however, altruistic ways of living, and there are selfish ways of living. And it behooves all of us to realize that the human species is one, entirely connected. The Yemeni pain, that gentleman's pain, people across the world, my pain, all stems from some human consciousness, right? Something gestating. In 49 days, some say, the spirit enters and then comes out of a womb or from that canal or cesarean section like I was. You are there, growing, and some spirit is there inside of you, some soul, some energy, whatever you want to call it, okay? But that is like stalagmites and stalactites in a cave, okay? And we are the very ends of the inner workings of the cave with these stalagmites and stalactites. Either you are up here or you're down here, because there's always somebody with less and there's always somebody with more. However, you are all still those calcifications of elements, just like we are all elements and cosmic dust, and it makes sense for us to want to help each other. There is a huge need for that. It's time to learn about Yemen now in Griffith Park once again for part 2. Welcome back. This is History of Yemen post 1990 unification. So Yemen has about 25 million people, and that's 25 million different perspectives on the madness therein. After unification in 1990, the leader of the north, Ali-Saleh, became the president of the country, while the leader of the south, al-Baid, became the vice president. And Sana'a was declared the political capital of the country, while Aden in the south was declared the economic capital. After Saudi Arabia expelled 850,000 Yemeni workers from their country following the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in 1990, massive unemployment and unrest fell onto Yemen. As a result, bomb attacks and political killings sieged the country for the next 3 years, until finally in 1993, the long-promised general election was held. This formed a legislative coalition between the 3 major parties of the country. But soon after the election, the Vice President al-Baid fled Sana'a for Aden, claiming that his southern constituents had been politically instigated with violence and marginalized. Following standoff between President Saleh and Vice President al-Baid was short-lived, as was their temporary peace agreement. After the pledge and agreement document was signed in February 1994, the neighboring countries of Oman and Jordan actually halted the mediation talks between the two sides, instigating more unrest. Then throughout the summer, a full-scale civil war befell the country of Yemen. Huge losses in population and infrastructure began to crumble the country. Even Russia attempted a peace agreement as a ceasefire. However, that was negated when the northern forces under al-Saleh sacked the southern forces and Aden, crushing the Democratic Republic of Yemen. Then, in 1995, Yemen and Eritrea clashed over disputed islands in the Red Sea, continuing a long process of attempted fixes to the nation's economic, social, political, and territorial strife for Yemeni autonomy. As a result of President Saleh crushing the forces of the DRY in 1994, the new leader of the southern factions and the former vice president and current president of Yemen was Abdurrahman Mansour Hadi. And now we fast forward to 2000, when the USS Cole was attacked by al-Qaeda suicide bombers, and that put al-Qaeda and counterterrorism on the map and as a priority for Washington, D.C. Fast forward to the year 2002, when al-Qaeda is expelled from Yemen, with 100 foreign Islamic clerics forced to leave Yemen. Then in 2003, 10 chief suspects of the USS Cole bombing actually escaped in Aden, and only 2 were recaptured a year later. And between 2004 and 2008, the Houthi uprising saw many skirmishes between Sana'a and tribesmen in and around that northern region. In 2005, President Saleh claimed victory to killing the leader of the Houthis, Hussein al-Houthi, and 1 year following, in 2006, he won re-election of the country of Yemen again. Between 2008 and 2011, government reforms were pushed forward with demonstrations in Sana'a, Shia rebellions, Saudi-backed disputes and attempts on Yemeni border territories, and much more. In 2010, a cargo plane intercepted from Yemen bound to the United States was discovered to be carrying explosives, and this elevated the global threat of terrorism one more time. So the Arab Spring of 2011 forced the resignation of President Saleh, and a year following, the former Vice President Hadi then became the new president in 2012 with no contest. From 2011 onward, the Houthi faction begins to rise, and they make advancements on President Hadi and his administration, as well as attempted takeovers of the capital of Sana'a. Internal and fractional rejections of Hadi's proposed constitution resulted in even more victories for Houthi rebels, and changes in Yemeni landscapes, literally and figuratively, brought more international involvement. Now, the first U.S. drone strike took place in 2009, but the U.S.'s involvement in Yemen merits another episode in and of itself, because there was just so much in unpacking and researching this topic that deserves its own time frame. So, moving on. Here we have the Houthis, and they are a Shia sect from the Sada'a province of Yemen. They have the support of Iran, and Iran is a regional rival to Saudi Arabia in the Arabian Peninsula. And actually now the Houthis have forced the resignation of former President Saleh's successor, President Hadi, in 2014. Here's going to get a little interesting and convoluted. The Saudis backed President Hadi, and they are currently providing refuge for him and his loyal forces. And the Saudis think that military intervention may be necessary. Personally, I don't think anything other than disarmament is necessary, but that is my opinion, and should be the opinion of everybody else. Alright, moving on. President El-Sisi of Egypt also shows support for Mr. Hadi. Egypt has the largest army in the Arab world, and they claim it may be necessary to deploy ground troops. Another player in the Yemeni conflict is Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the AQAP, who have control over territory on the southern coasts. This gives supporters hope of stability through Houthi change. Contrasting that idea from a New York Times article, April 21st, 2015, the, quote, Sunni militants of Al-Qaeda, who regard the Houthis as heretics because they are a member of the minority Zaidi sect, which is an offshoot of Shia Islam, have retaliated with growing ferocity. There are even more split oppositions in Yemen. Al-Hirak, a marginalized faction in Yemen, has started rebelling since 1994 and has even pushed for secession within the country. The aforementioned Houthi movement, which is based among the Zaidi Shias of northern Yemen, has rebelled 6 times in 6 years between 2004 and 2010, all against Saleh's government. In 2011, and because of the Arab Spring, Saleh stepped down with promises of immunity after being accused of running a corrupt and autocratic government. This paved the way for President Hadi to come to power, who is currently recognized internationally as the president of Yemen. A group called the Gulf Cooperation Council tried to broker a new constitution with 565 delegates of the National Dialogue Conference covering Yemen's fractional society. The committees urged the criminalizing of drones and extrajudicial killings, including drone strikes. And other agreements reached by those delegates were empty words like beginning to cooperate, to move forward, to start, to rebuild, to understand the cooperation, to try to do this. To me, all of those are just empty words and empty promises, because not enough is happening day by day. There's all of these delayed actions. We need direct action. So surprise, surprise, so much of this is based on oil. President Hadi lifted the fuel subsidy in 2014, and his supporters defended that, while the Houthis demanded lower oil prices and a new government. I mean, that's pretty clear. Another cause of this Yemeni crisis is the Houthi advancement on the capital of Sana'a and them taking that city over in 2014. They then moved south and forced Hadi to resign in 2015, then following that declared a constitutional fiat. Another problem came from military forces loyal to Saleh joining the Houthis. This new Saleh-Houthi union continually battles other militias who are loyal to the southern forces, opposed to this new cooperation in the north. Are you ready for another cause? You want another one? There are more! Another cause is the Saudi counterstrike to Houthi advancements into Aden. Once Hadi fled to Saudi Arabia, the intervention to restore Hadi's administration to Sana'a has been led by Saudi military forces, primarily. And here we are today. There was and has been a Saudi-led coalition to restore Hadi's administration to the capital of Sana'a.
This has killed more than 10,000 people and impoverished millions, forcing civilians to flee for fear of airstrikes and raids at all times. So much of this is to recapture Sana'a and reinstate the Hadi government, but the failure lies on the backs of the innocent, and we are guilty just as much as Saudi Arabia for aiding and abetting. I won't get ahead of myself, that's a whole nother issue. Oh my goodness, golly, we got friggin' through it.
Well, after all that discussion about war and violence and regime change, let's come back to this book we've already talked about, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. This will cover a section that is very applicable to what we just talked about. Why not keep talking about war? That's what all this is about, isn't it? Waging War, section 2, and point 6 and 7 read as follows. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. And it is only one who is thoroughly acquainted with the evils of war that can thoroughly understand the profitable way of carrying it on.